Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something absolutely fundamental to success, really, based on some fascinating source material we've got here.
Mm.
Excerpts from a chapter called Decision, the Mastery of Procrastination. And wow, it lays out a really powerful case for why making, definite decisions is just non-negotiable.
Yeah, especially if you want significant goals like financial success.
Right. And it contrasts that so starkly with the drag of indecision and, yes, procrastination.
Absolutely. Think of this deep dive as us sort of zeroing in on the core insights. What does this source actually say are the habits? The things that separate people who really achieve things from those who maybe don't.
And what gets in the way? Because it seems like things do get in the way, even for smart people.
For sure. And the big one.
hmm
How does this apply to you, your life, your ambitions, what you want to get done?
The source kicks off with a statistic that, honestly, it really grabs you. It says, based on looking at over 25,000 people who experienced failure, the number one cause, like right at the top.
Lack of decision. Simple as that.
Yeah. Lack of decision.
And it doesn't pull any punches, does it? It calls procrastination the direct opposite. Decision's nemesis, basically.
A common enemy. That's the phrase used. Something everyone battles.
Pretty much.
Okay, so here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. The material suggests, from looking at thousands of people, especially the ones who built fortunes, that there are these incredibly distinct habits around decision-making.
Habits that are just, well, absent in those who fail financially.
Exactly. So our mission today is to figure out what makes this definite decision thing so powerful, and importantly, how you might cultivate it yourself based on what this source says.
Okay, so let's dig into that core contrast the source highlights. Successful folks versus those who didn't make it, financially speaking.
And the difference is, well, it's not subtle at all. Successful people, it says, they reach decisions promptly,
Quick decisions.
and then
Yeah.
they change those decisions slowly, if they even change them at all.
Right. And the flip side. This is apparently universal for those who fail to build wealth.
Yeah.
They reach decisions very slowly, if they get there.
If at all, yeah.
And then when they finally do choose something, they change their minds fast and often. It's the complete reverse pattern.
The text brings up Henry Ford as, like, the prime example of this in action. His standout habit, according to this source, reaching decisions quickly, definitely, and then sticking with them, changing slowly.
Yes, it notes this trait.
Hmm?
It actually earned him a reputation for being obstinate, stubborn.
Mhm.
It points famously to the Model T, which the source kind of amusingly calls the world's ugliest car,
Ah, yeah.
and how he stuck with that design for years, even when advisors, customers, everyone was basically begging him for a change.
But the point isn't that, never changing is good. It's that Ford's firmness, that definiteness in his decision, that's what built the huge fortune before the change eventually had to happen.
Right. And the source makes this almost provocative point,
Mm.
saying that kind of obstinacy in sticking to a decision is actually better than being slow to decide and then quick to jump ship.
Better than being wishy-washy.
Exactly. So, okay, if that's the habit we want, what stops us? The source points to some pretty big obstacles, things that sabotage our ability to be definite.
And the first one it flags is maybe the sneakiest one. The massive influence of what other people think, their opinions.
Oh, absolutely. The material is blunt. Most people who fail are just too easily swayed. They let, the newspapers, the gossiping neighbors.
Usual acquaintances.
Right. They let them do their thinking for them. It's outsourcing your brain almost.
There's a line in here that really stuck with me. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anyone who will accept them. It's so true, isn't it? Unsolicited advice is everywhere.
And the source really stresses letting those opinions guide you. It blocks your success because it stops you connecting with and following your own deep desire, your own purpose.
So the advice is pretty direct. Keep your own counsel. Trust yourself.
But importantly, it doesn't mean be a total hermit. Right. There's an exception mentioned.
Right. You can take people into your confidence, but only specific people. Members of what it calls your mastermind.
Ah, yes, the mastermind. It sounds a bit grand, maybe, but the definition here is specific.
Yeah.
It's people who are in complete sympathy and harmony with your specific purpose.
It's not just your buddies or your family, necessarily.
No. And the source explains why friends and relatives, even when they mean well, can actually be problematic.
How so?
Their opinions, sometimes dressed up as teasing or, harmless ridicule, can actually chip away at your confidence, plant seeds of doubt, make you second-guess yourself.
That's a really sad point it makes, suggesting, countless people carry inferiority complexes their whole lives because someone, maybe meaning well, just undermined their belief with a casual comment or joke.
Yeah, it's quite sobering.
So the direct advice from the source here is you have a brain, you have a mind, use it. Rely on yourself to reach your decisions.
And if you need info from others, go get it. Gather the facts, but do it quietly. Don't broadcast everything, which leads perfectly into the second big obstacle,
Which is?
talking too much, especially too soon, revealing your plans before they're really baked.
Ah, okay. The source kind of characterizes people with only superficial knowledge as, well, doing way too much talking and not nearly enough listening.
And this isn't just about missing chances to learn, although that's part of it. It's actually presented as dangerous.
Dangerous how?
If you're constantly talking about your plans and goals, you're essentially broadcasting them to people who might, even subconsciously, feel envy or jealousy.
Mm.
People who might enjoy seeing you stumble or even actively try to trip you up.
Wow, okay. That's quite a warning.
It is. And the contrast drawn is with people of, real accomplishment. The source notes they're often noticeable for their modesty, their silence even.
So the actionable advice here is pretty clear then.
Very pointed. Make it one of your first decisions to keep a closed mouth and open ears and eyes. It suggests, kind of implies, that those who are always talking aren't really doing much else.
And it wraps this up with a little motto, an epigram from the source. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it.
Deeds, not words. That's the gist. Your actions should speak for themselves.
So when you're in that crucial phase, gathering info, figuring things out for a big decision, do it discreetly. Focus on getting the knowledge, not telling everyone your grand plan.
Exactly. Keep it close to your chest until it's time to act.
Now, beyond these habits and obstacles, the source makes it really clear that definite decision-making isn't just a skill set. It requires something deeper. It requires courage.
Yeah, it directly links the value, the significance of a decision to the amount of courage it took to actually make it.
And it argues the truly great decisions, the ones that shaped history, were made by people willing to take on huge risks. Sometimes, like the ultimate risk, death.
The text gives a few quick but really powerful historical examples of this kind of courage.
Like who?
Well, Lincoln, deciding to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, knowing full well it would alienate thousands, friends, political allies, and put his own life potentially on the line. That's a decision forged in pure courage.
Definitely.
Or Socrates, choosing to drink the hemlock rather than renounce his beliefs. The source makes a pretty bold claim that this single act, this decision, advanced free thought and free speech by maybe 1,000 years.
Wow. And Robert E. Lee.
General Lee, yeah. His agonizing choice in the Civil War to side with Virginia, knowing the immense personal cost, the terrible risk to himself and, well, countless others. Another example of profound, if complex, decision under pressure.
But the source zeroes in on one historical event as like the absolute peak of courageous decision-making, especially for
The
Americans.
signing of the Declaration of Independence.
July 4th, 1776, Philadelphia. 56 men put their names on that document.
And the source really emphasizes the incredible risk they took. They were essentially signing their own potential death warrants. It was freedom, or it was the gallows for treason, no middle ground.
The source also challenges kind of conventional history here. It suggests historians often miss the real forces at play, the intangible power behind things like Washington's eventual victory.
Right. It argues that victory was actually, in a sense, ensured long before Lord Cornwallis surrendered, which is a fascinating thought.
It is, and this irresistible power, as it calls it, is key. It's not trying to diminish Washington's leadership, that the source praises him, but it's highlighting this, like, underlying force.
And it says it's a tragedy historians often overlook this power because, and this is the crucial connection, it's the very same power that any individual needs to tap into to overcome their own challenges, to achieve their own goals.
Okay, so where did this power come from, according to the source? It traces it back through these seemingly small events leading up to the Declaration.
It starts with something like the Boston incident, March 5, 1770. Soldiers, resentment, conflict. A spark, sure.
But the real beginning of American freedom, according to this text, it was a definite decision, made in the minds of just two men.
Samuel Adams and one other person in the Provincial Assembly.
Their decision. The British soldiers had to be ejected from Boston. That simple but incredibly bold decision by just two people, that's identified as the actual starting point.
And it required immense faith. Huge courage. Because it was incredibly dangerous to even think that, let alone say it or act on it.
Samuel Adams was then chosen to go confront Governor Hutchinson, demand the troop withdrawal, which, surprisingly, was granted.
But the fuse was lit. And the source highlights this pattern. Massive changes often start small, maybe seem unimportant at first, but they always originate from a definite decision by a small, committed group.
It names Adams, John Hancock, and Richard Henry Lee of Virginia as the real fathers in this sense, the ones who made those initial crucial decisions.
And it was the letters back and forth between Lee and Adams that planted the idea of the colonies working together, a coordinated effort.
Which led to Adams making the motion for a committee of correspondence in March 1772, its stated aim, just friendly cooperation for the betterment of the colonies. Sounds pretty mild.
Seems mild, but the source says this is the moment that far-flung power started to get organized. It brings back that mastermind idea, Adams, Lee, Hancock initially, then expanding through the committee to include key people from all the colonies.
The first real organized planning for independence. The source really emphasizes that. In union, there is strength. Their earlier separate efforts, not effective. It took this mastermind.
Exactly. And then came the big test for Adams. The new governor, Gage, tried to crush him, using the oldest tool in the book, fear.
Ow.
Gage sent Colonel Fenton with an offer, basically a bribe for Adams to switch sides, coupled with a threat. Shop opposing the crown or face charges of treason to be shipped off to England for trial.
Wow. So Adams is on the spot, a decision that could cost him his life or mean betraying everything.
And his reply, as the source quotes it, it's just incredible. He basically tells Fenton to tell Gage he's already made his peace with the King of Kings, that no personal gain would make him abandon his country, and advises Gage to stop insulting the people.
Talk about a definite, courageous decision. No hesitation.
None. Gage, of course, was furious. He issued a proclamation offering a pardon to all rebels except Adams and Hancock, ordered them captured on the spot.
So the threat becomes immediate, personal.
Which forces Adams and Hancock into another dangerous decision. They call a secret meeting. Adams apparently locks the door, pockets the key,
Oh, way out.
and declares nobody leaves until they've made the decision to organize a Congress of all the colonies.
Must have been tense.
You bet. The source mentions fear in the room, uncertainty. But Adams and Hancock, it says they were immune to fear, blind to the possibility of failure. Their sheer certainty carried the day. They decided to arrange the First Continental Congress.
And here's a really interesting insight from the source, something I hadn't considered. It argues that the date the decision was made for that Congress, September 5, 1774, is arguably more important than July 4, 1776.
Why is that?
Because without that definite decision to even hold the Congress, the Declaration itself could never have happened. It was the absolutely necessary first step, born from that organized, courageous decision by Adams, Hancock, and the others.
That makes sense. The foundation had to be laid.
The text also briefly mentions others facing similar huge risks. Jefferson threatened with treason for his summary of rights. Patrick Henry's famous line, "If this be treason, then make the most of it." Defiance in the face of mortal danger.
These people, remember, they didn't have armies or fortunes initially, just conviction. They met for 2 years in the Continental Congress. Then, June 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee finally makes the formal motion for independence.
He apparently got impatient with all the debates, stood up and demanded, "Why then, sir, do we longer delay?" pushing for the decision.
Lee had to leave, though, due to a family illness. But he passed the torch to Jefferson, who promised to see it through. Jefferson chaired the committee to draft the Declaration.
Again, the source stresses they worked on this document knowing full well that if they failed, every single person who signed it was basically signing their own death warrant.
The draft was read, debated, tweaked, until July 4th, 1776. Jefferson reads the final version.
It's voted on, accepted, and then those 56 men step forward and sign it, staking their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor on that collective, definite decision.
And by that single act, born of immense courage and decision, a nation comes into being. A nation the source believes was destined to give humanity the right to make its own decisions.
It really drives home the point. This nation wasn't an accident, it wasn't luck. It was born from a definite decision, forged by a mastermind group of 56 individuals.
And the spirit of their decision, that almost spiritual power behind it, that's what truly ensured Washington's victory. Because in the eyes of that unwavering spirit, failure just wasn't an option.
So, okay, bringing this massive historical example all the way back to you listening right now. The source makes this really powerful claim.
Which is?
That this same power, the one that fueled a revolution, that came from desire, backed by definite decision, fueled by faith and courage, that same power is available to you for your own self-determination, your own success.
And it clarifies this isn't like magic or some mystery. It's about aligning with what it calls the eternal laws of nature. Principles like desire, decision, faith, persistence.
Principles available to anyone who has the eth and the courage to actually use them. They can lead to national freedom or, just as powerfully, to personal wealth, to achieving your goals. The main cost is simply the effort to understand and apply them.
The text is really clear. People who make prompt, definite decisions, they know what they want, and because of that clarity, that commitment, they usually get it.
Look around, it suggests. Leaders in any walk of life, they decide quickly, firmly. That's a big part of why they are leaders.
Yeah, there's a great line in there. The world has the habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show that he knows where he is going. People respond to certainty.
Okay, now let's flip it. Indecision. The source calls this a habit too, often formed young.
Yeah, it suggests this lack of definiteness of purpose can start early, partly because, well, many school systems don't really teach or encourage decision-making habits. It's more about absorbing information.
The source even floats this idea, wouldn't it be great if schools actually trained and tested students on making decisions?
Interesting thought experiment.
That
And this indecisiveness, it says, carries right over into choosing a career.
How so?
Many young people just take any job that comes along. They lack the definiteness of decision needed to actually plan for a specific position or choose a particular employer strategically.
And it throws out a statistic. 98 out of 100 wage earners are in the positions they're in precisely because they lacked that definiteness. They drifted into it rather than deciding on it.
Oof, 98 out of 100, that's sobering.
It is. So connecting this back to your pursuit of personal riches or success, whatever that means for you, the source hammers it home again. Definiteness of decision requires courage.
Maybe not, facing the gallows courage like the 56 signers,
Hopefully, yeah.
but definitely the courage to stake your economic freedom, to commit to a path.
The source is unequivocal. Financial independence, wealth, getting that position you really want. These things are simply not within reach if you neglect or refuse to actively expect them, plan for them, and demand them through definite decisions.
It makes a promise, essentially. The
Yeah.
person who approaches their goals with that same spirit of unwavering decision that the colonies showed, that person is sure to accumulate wealth, achieve their objectives. It frames it as almost inevitable if the decision is strong enough.
And it mentions practical tools like an organized planning chapter, presumably elsewhere in the text, but stresses a vital point. All the instructions in the world, they're useless.
Utterly useless, yeah.
Unless you first make the definite decision to actually use them, to organize them into your own plan of action. The decision has to come first. Always.
It all hinges on that initial commitment.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this deep dive mean for you sitting here listening today?
Well, we've peeled back the layers on this really potent source material, haven't we? We've seen that definite decision is like the bedrock of success.
We've looked at how outside opinions and talking too soon can just, sink your best efforts.
And the quiet power of focused private planning. Plus that incredible historical example of courage birthing a nation.
The central theme, really, is that the same kind of power born from desire, decision, faith, courage that created massive change on a world stage is accessible for your own life, your personal mastery, your achievements.
It's not presented as magic. It's about cultivating a crucial habit, understanding these principles and finding the courage to apply them.
And the source strongly implies you absolutely have the capacity for definite decision within you. It's there.
Yeah, maybe it's a muscle that needs strengthening. Obstacles you need to learn to navigate. Courage you need to find when it matters. But the capacity is there.
So based on everything we've explored today, the stark difference between failure and fortune, those subtle enemies of resolve like opinions and gossip, and the sheer historical weight of courageous decision. Here's the final thought for you.
What is the single most important, maybe the most courageous decision you need to make today? Right now. A decision that will powerfully move you closer to your own version of freedom or success or whatever goal burns brightest for you.